to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Make sure you catch us every Thursday and every Sunday on KCAA Radio, serving the Inland Empire and most of Southern California. If you miss us live, you can catch us on kcaaradio.com or in the archives, or we are on streaming on Amazon Fire, on Roku, and on the Android app. Look for the Building Solid Foundations channel. That's a free app you can download and find this show and other fantastic shows that are here on KCAA. Go ahead and check that out. You'll actually be able to see the video feed of the show as well as the audio. We're also probably on your favorite podcast platform. We're on about 15. We're adding more all the time. Today I'm going to talk to you about something I get asked a lot. Usually I have guests on the show and we talk about different things, and I actually prefer that because I find other people are fascinating. I love talking to them, figuring out what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. But I get asked a lot by people trying to get an understanding of what I do besides the radio show here. My company, Coast to Coast Equities, is a company. We do land acquisition, we do entitlement, we do development, land development projects. And for a lot of people, they don't really understand what does that mean, especially on the land entitlement side of things. Even people that are been in the real estate business for a long time, they have an expertise in it. Most real estate professionals do not understand this particular part of the business. In fact, just recently, I made a presentation to the Board of Realtors in Arizona, the Phoenix area. To explain this, the government affairs director had asked me to do about a 60-minute presentation because as an association of professional real estate people, they knew very little about this. Some had never even knew this existed as part of the deal, but it's been around forever. It's the first step in the process. So I'm going to talk to you about a little about what it is, and I want to make sure you understand I'm not trying to convince you to do this. I'm not trying to sell any of the projects we do, any of that kind of stuff. This is strictly just informational and to kind of address people that have asked me, say, why don't you talk about what you do? I even had somebody tell me once that when I explained what we do, they said, gosh, there should be a TV show about that. They got all these TV shows about fix and flips and ADUs and all these things. You should have a show about that. And I'm thinking, no, please. That'll ruin everything. One of the great things is that it's not very well known, and so really only it's usually professional people doing it, people that understand it. When you get into television shows, entertainment about things, and yes, it's fascinating and it would be a gripping topic, what you find is that all of a sudden everybody comes out of the woodwork and wants to jump on the wagon, which is why I don't do house flipping anymore. I did much house flipping back in the 90s, early 2000s. I was doing that. And I don't do it anymore because everybody and their grandma came out of the woodwork to do it, and it kind of took the fun and the profit out of it. And you got a lot of people out there doing it that really just diluted the whole thing. So I'm happy that there's not a show on this, and that may make me sound a little exclusionary, but that's just, I guess, the way it is. So let's talk about what do we do. What is it? How do you make money just doing land, empty land, profiting from doing land and real estate? And this is something that most of the high-end professional developers and builders have always used. It's the biggest piece of the income piece of the puzzle. It's the largest potential for making a big profit and return. It also comes with a commensurate amount of very high risk as well. So I'm gonna walk through this. First of all, let's look at the different types of real estate projects there are out there. And again, for those of you who have listened for a while, you know I talk about lots of different topics here, but probably much more than its fair share. I talk about real estate, I talk about investing, I talk about finance, the economy, those things, because that's the world that I live and work in, and that's what I know. And so I do a lot in the real estate world. I speak at a lot of different real estate associations and clubs. I do it as a living. So let's talk about different categories. So most people are familiar with what I call the typical real estate investments. And these are the things that people do that we're familiar with. This is you buy and hold a residence. You can live in it. You buy and hold it and live in it, or you buy and hold it and maybe rent it out to somebody, and then eventually you're going to sell it. And if you buy it and just live in it, you're not making money. It's actually costing you money while you're there, but it's going to appreciate over time. And yes, the market goes up and down. That's a fact. There's a lot of discussion whether the market's up, down, or in the middle right now. But if you look at the long-term trend, especially where I am here in Southern California, most areas of Southern California, especially the coastal areas, real estate values have about doubled roughly every 15 years since the end of World War II. They go up and down all over the place in between. There's highs and there's lows. But they, on average, they double about every 15 years. So it doesn't matter if you bought it in the low. If you sell it 15 years later and it's in the next low, it's still double what it was before. If you bought it at the high and then it went down and came back up again, if you sell it at the high again, you're about double where it was. As long as you hold on to it long enough and you're in a good market, and that's not just Southern California, a lot of other areas in Florida, Texas, and Arizona, there's a lot of areas, Washington, there's a lot of areas that have been doing very, very well with real estate. There's other areas that don't. They're parts of the country that do not appreciate, and that's a different strategy. Those are places generally where there's more money in cash flow, so that's also traditional as well. That's buying, holding, and renting something out over a long term. The value of the property itself may not appreciate much, if any, in some of those markets. A lot of the Midwest is like that. However, some of the Southeast is like that. But if you're getting the rentals, it's a low cost to get in, and the rents are still pretty much the same across the board. So you're actually going to get more of a cash flow out of that. The rent compared to your cost into it. When you're in the markets that appreciate highly, generally you'll be upside down on that. You can't rent it out for as much as your cost basis is for the first few years until that catches up, rent rates catch up with that. So that's typical. There's also, you can do the fix and flips. We've seen those on TV. We're familiar with those. Buy a place, fix it up to add value to it, and then sell it off again, or maybe even add square footage to it, value add. There are people that will actually fix, and live in a place while they fix it up and then sell it. Other people just buy it, fix it up, and don't live it and sell it. You can rent it out long term. Those are typical real estate investment projects that we're all very familiar with. It's easy to get funding for them. Real estate agents understand them. Most people get it. And you can find people to loan you money for that. And I did a lot of that in my past. And then there's the more advanced level. This is where you get into kind of some of the same but larger. For example, multifamily. You buy, and maybe you live in a fourplex. You live in one unit and rent the other three out. That works. You hold on to that for a while, or you could buy it and rent all 4 units out. You could buy, even larger units than that, 6, 8 units, and buy those. You can fix those up a little bit, maybe even increase the rent if you make them nicer, remodel them, and then sell that. Again, in an appreciating market, you can make money off the appreciation on that, or you hold on to it forever and just keep collecting the cash flow on it. You can do leases, long-term leases. You can do light commercial property. You can, buy a business park condo, or you can buy a small strip center, a little building, buy a building along a storefront along a street, and rent that out to somebody, fix it up and rent it out to somebody. You can do a spec home. You can buy a lot, build a single home on there, and then sell it when it's finished to somebody. You could do a lot split, buy a piece of land that you're allowed to break into 2 to 3 pieces, and then sell those off, or build on those and sell those off. So those are a little more advanced. Again, most of us are kind of familiar with that. I would put note investing into here a little bit. If you can buy a note, again, a lot of people don't understand what those are. But you can buy that and invest, where basically you become the bank, but you're not buying portfolios of notes. You're just buying a note at a time. You're just become the bank for someone. You can carry backs, those type of things. So there's more advanced that you can do, a little bit more risk, generally a little bit more on the upside as well. And then you get into this realm that I call the expert real estate investments. And this is where a lot of people either don't know they exist, or they know they exist, but they would have no idea how to get into it. This is very large commercial properties. You can purchase and then tenant improvements, or do a build to suit and then lease it or manage it long term. Maybe you can sell it off after a while. You can do raw land like my company does, where you buy empty land and you go through the entitlement process, and I'm going to talk about that today. Entitle it, get approvals on it, and then you can sell it as approved empty land, or you can go ahead and develop it, put the improvements in it, or improvements like the infrastructure and the utilities, or you can actually build the vertical buildings and then hold on to those and become a property manager of commercial properties. You can do production homes, where you buy a piece of land, you break it up into individual parcels. Let's say you got 100 different sites, and then you build homes in phases of 6, 8 at a time, maybe a dozen at a time, depending on the absorption rate, and you sell those off kind of tract homes. You can do that as well. You can do more prolific on the spec home side, where you're not just doing onesie twosie. You've got 3, 4, 5 going at a time on different sites, kind of building what are kind of like custom homes, but building them to sell them off at the end. You can do master plan communities. There's high rises, there's mixed use projects, large industrial type projects. Think about warehouses and distribution centers. All that comes into this more expert level of real estate. And these are the big, huge companies that do this stuff. And most of us don't know how to get into that. There's barriers to entry. And I can address some of those barriers to entry are that it takes a lot of money. And I mean, it's really significant capital most of us don't have access to. Very high equity to loan ratios on land. It's not this 10, 20% down stuff. You can have well over 50% probably that you need to have into it before they'll loan you the balance of it. There's personal guarantees on these loans where you have to guarantee to pay it back. It pierces all business entities you might do to protect yourself. There's a lot of expertise you need legally, land use, construction management, architecture, engineering, finance. There's a lot of liability here. So there's a lot of barriers to why people don't get in. And I'm going to get into why we got into it, how we mitigate those barriers, and how it can be accessible on a small scale to even people that don't know how to get into this. I'm going to talk about what it is when we come back from this break. This is Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley, and we're going to get into the weeds on how to make money in land in real estate. We'll be right back after this short
message. Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 95137853316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Most mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station, KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today, I'm talking to you about how to make money in just raw land and what my company does. And I'm doing this just because people ask me consistently, what exactly does your company do? How do you do that? Why do you do it? How does that make any money? Who cares? And so that's why I want to talk about this, to kind of answer some of that and give you a little, just a quick overview of what it is, why it is, and maybe you didn't even know that existed out there. And again, I encourage you, don't just run off and, take this little snippet and go off and try to do it on your own if you don't know how to do it. I'm going to give you some tips of how you can get into this before the end of the program. not just with me, but with the other people out there that are doing this. So first of all, let me talk. We talked a little about some of the barriers why people don't get into this, because of the amount of money it takes, the amount of risk involved, the amount of knowledge and skills that you would need to be able to do this successfully, and the exposure you might have. And there's a reason that it's very larger companies that tend to do this. But I want to talk a little bit about what the main difference is between this and those more traditional real estate investment things that most of us know about, the fix and flip and the long-term rental hold, even if you buying something and making short-term rental out of it, an Airbnb out of it, building ADUs in your backyard, those type of things. A lot of the traditional stuff is really emotion-based. It's not. We like to think it's based on logic, that we did all the research and it's a good business decision, but the fact is there's a reason that there's TV shows about those kind of projects. The reason there's TV shows about those kind of projects is because it's mostly emotional. TV works on emotion, and so when you're watching that DIY program, when you're watching HGTV and they're doing these things, it's an emotional connection. We love what they're doing. We like the fact that you can release your interior designer. We like the fact that that we can see something, envision something, and see it come to fruition. We can see ourselves doing that. Residential real estate tends to be very emotional. It's based on, this is the best neighborhood. I love the school district for our kids. I can see our family having Thanksgiving here around this table. This is the master bedroom of my dream. Look at this fantastic kitchen, the entertaining we could do. What a great backyard this is. It's very emotional. When you get into the expert level stuff, it's really not. You can have an emotional attachment to a project, but it doesn't matter. It's going to come down to, does it pencil? It's about spreadsheets. It's about numbers. It's about finance. It's about pluses and minuses. And there are projects that I've had very strong emotional feelings towards. I think I can see it. I can envision it. I think this will be a fantastic project. What a great thing we could do here. And it just doesn't come back. A market study doesn't support it. The numbers don't pencil out right. We can't get it at the right price. We can't sell it at the right price to make it work. So we walk away from it. We just let it. It's very much a logic-based deal. And whatever emotional feelings you have about a project don't matter. They're negated. And you have a check and balance, and you're probably not doing it by yourself. You're doing it with other people as a team. And so everybody there is checking each other's emotions at it, saying, no, this is not a good idea, or yes, we need to do this, and here's why. Or we're going to do this, but not the plan we had. We're going to do a different plan. I have a project in Arizona I'm doing right now that we had an entirely different concept when we first tied the property up and decided to do a project. It's about 320 acres. And we originally were going to do half acre and 1 acre lots on this thing. But after driving around, looking at the area, market studies, doing all the grunt work when it comes to the spreadsheets, it's a completely different plan now. It's broken into 5 separate projects that are a commercial RV park, those type of things, because that is what that area will support, not what we had originally intended. So again, the logic is very important on this. Okay, so now let's get into how do we mitigate some of these risk factors and barriers to entry. Well, one way we do it to help people get into it that normally wouldn't be able to get into this thing, because most of your average people don't have a few $1 million laying around in a bank account they can go put into a nice big project. We do the land projects, and what we do is we put them into form entities and do what they call syndications. And there's big syndications too, where you have to be accredited investors to come in. So you want to do research on that. We do smaller versions of those. We do big ones too. We do large projects with single investors that are accredited investors, or 2 or 3 big investors, and we do those. But we always try to do a few smaller projects too. And the smaller projects we try to make available to people with smaller amounts of money, so that if they come in and the project doesn't work, they haven't altered their lifestyle. They haven't lost money that's going to cause them to be on the street. But it also gives them a chance to get into projects where they have an opportunity to make some of those higher returns that are usually not available to them, and helps them. And we have a history of working with people that come in as non-accredited investors, and after working with a few projects with us, they become accredited. They learn not just our projects, they take some of that proceeds and go buy portfolios of rental properties and other things. And we're proud of being a part of that. Obviously there's no guarantees on anything, but we try to make it smaller, lower that risk. So we'll do project where we purchase and entitle and then sell a piece of property, and it doesn't work everywhere, and it doesn't work at all times. It works in markets and at times where the market is growing and expanding, where there is a deficit of supply relative to the demand. And the reason that we do it is because it doesn't take all the money that you normally have to borrow to do construction. Construction's very expensive. What we do requires mostly paperwork. It's drawings and reports. And so we don't need a big staff. We don't need to have a fleet. We don't need material contracts. We don't have a lot of labor to pay. We don't have any of that kind of stuff. And so you can do it with very, very low overhead and still have a pretty decent upside to it. And that's why we chose to do that. And it's kind of the upside to this very arduous process that's out there of land use, where there's restrictions and regulations and red tape when it comes to doing what you want to do. And I've actually got into that in a couple of previous shows where we talked about, actually with a show we did a couple weeks back with the Hunter, and he's a planning commissioner for his town. He talked about some of this stuff. And this is in California, we have what's called CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. Nationally, there's NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. And what these do is they make sure that people aren't misusing their land in ways that can be detrimental to their community or to natural habitat. So you have to do traffic studies and noise studies and cultural studies and biological studies and all these different things to show that if whatever you're going to do, if there's any negative impacts, can you mitigate those impacts? Or are maybe there's no impacts. So we want to make sure that you're not taking historical treasures and bulldozing them over to build something else without anybody, checking in on that. So it's a very slow process. And that's why there's value in it, because people that want to do the actual construction and building on here probably want to avoid all the pitfalls and landmines of that process. And it's a lot of work, especially in California. It's so long and arduous and so much brain damage. It's just most people want to avoid it, and it's just unpredictable. Out of state, we find it's much easier to work with. It's still a slower process compared to a lot of things, but we can get done in 9-10 months out of state, where it could take us 3, 4, 5 years in California. We found that these projects actually tend to work best in states where all Californians are moving to. So that's not a political commentary or anything. It's just the fact that in Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, they're great places to do these kind of projects. So what we do is we'll buy raw or underused land. So think about, say, fallow agricultural land. We got a piece of land that was an alfalfa farm to support a dairy. Well, the dairy moved out 20 years ago. So it's just been sitting there. They don't need the alfalfa farm for it. So we buy that, and that's, say, 40, 50 acres, and then we'll go through the process of drawing a map that is a new community, say 150, 250 homes on this site. And we'll go through a legal process. It's called entitlement. Legal process through the zoning, through the local city agencies. There's a planning commission involved, and the planning department, the building and safety department, public works and flood control and all this kind of stuff you go through. And there's fees to pay. And once you get the approval to do that, what's known as the tentative map, but once we get approval, then we can sell that to someone who wants to buy it. Now, we could build it ourselves too, but again, that would take a lot of additional money and a lot of additional risk. And we have done that. There are some projects that we do build it out, but we keep them. Those are build-to-rent projects we do, our company does. But these projects I'm talking about today are ones that we basically, we keep them simple and small and put them on the lower shelf so that we can involve people that normally can't get involved in these kind of projects. And so you can do these by yourself if you had a lot of money and a lot of expertise, but generally they're done corporately. There's a group of people that get together, and there's different project structures that can be employed. And what it does is it takes a piece of agricultural land that maybe you could have 2, 3, maybe 4 residences on, even if with ADUs. You'd legally have that on, say, a 40 to 50 acre piece of land because it's agriculturally zoned. You go in, you do the rezoning process, break it up into individual parcels, parcels that can be individually sold and taxed, and recorded at the county as separate pieces of land. And when you do that, it increases the value dramatically. So think if you had a fix and flip and you bought a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home, and after you did the fix on it, it was a 100-unit condo building. That would obviously be a huge increase in the value, and that's what we're doing. Instead of 2, 3, 4 dwelling units on this piece of property, you could have 250 of them, and that's where the upside comes. So how do we do those? Well, I'm going to walk through step by step, but I'm going to give you the 5 steps up front, and then as we come back from the break, I'll start walking through what they do and how we work with them. So the first step is acquisition. You have to go find a piece of land, find a piece of real estate somewhere that's going to work. And I'll talk with you how that works, how we pick that. The second step is you have to come up with some kind of a project structure. You don't want to do this just by yourself under your own bank account. You want to set up some type of a business entity that's going to do this, especially if you're bringing other people with money in to help you or partnering with people. Third, you're going to go through the public entitlement process, and then I'll talk through that, what that is. And then 4, you're going to sell it to somebody who's going to build it. And then 5th, you're going to wind the project down and then share whatever the proceeds are. So that's kind of the process step by step. I'm going to get into each one of those steps when we come back from the break. This is Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley, and today I'm answering the question I get a lot: how does your company make money from empty land? And we'll be right back.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real men of real estate.
Men of Real Estate Radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio. Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today I'm in the studio talking to you about a question I get a lot, which is how does your company do these projects where you're dealing with empty land? Why do you do them and how do they work? And we kind of talked through some of the how do we categorize projects in the first part. We talked about some of the obstacles. And I got into right before the break what the basic process is. There's 5 steps, and those steps are: we acquire the land, we develop a structure for the project, we go through the entitlement process, we sell it to someone, and then we wind the project down and close everything out and distribute the proceeds. So let's talk, how do we find the land? Well, to find the land, we don't go, there is listed land, but we never go with listed land. Now, I want to say, just because we don't use listed land does not mean we do not use real estate agents. We use real estate agents. We tend to send them to people we have identified who own land that we'd like to get hold of. They are our representatives. So it's not traditional use of real estate agents where they get a listing and then they're going to try to sell it. They are partnered with us and collaborators with us. So We will profile properties. We'll go find an area we want to be in. When we first got to Arizona, I spent 3 days driving around an area of Arizona that we liked. I looked at the different cities in there, visited the jurisdictions, looked at what was there, what kind of land was available, what amenities were there, roads, employers. And then when I came back home, my partner and I went through and kind of Google mapped things and went through title company software to find parcels that looked like what we wanted. They were the areas we wanted. They were either in the zoning or could be zoned for what we wanted. There was utilities either at the site or close to it. So there's all these different things that we're looking for. So we profile the property. Once we find the properties we like, we contact those owners. We find out who the owners are and contact them. And we tell them we're not agents. We're not looking at listing. We're cash buyers. Are you interested in selling your land? Then we'll negotiate a purchase contract, and I'll get into, there's a lot of details on that. And then we go into escrow on it. So that's how we get the land. When we profile the property, a lot of it has to do with what jurisdiction is it in. And I mean the city or the county that's going to give approvals. Some are very pro-growth and some are not. We have no intention of going into a town and trying to talk them into, coerce, or force them into doing something that they don't want or the neighbors don't want. We want to work in towns that want that. Why would they want that? Well, because the new homes bring developer fees, which are used for schools and parks and those type of things. More homes means that as you get more people, more retail comes in, more businesses come in, more employers come in, which helps the city. So we'll go to towns that have that mentality. We look at the market. Just because we want to build somewhere doesn't mean anybody's going to buy there. So we look at a market study and say, is this a place anybody would buy a home, and what would they buy it for? Then we know how much we can buy land for. We look at our utilities near the site or close to the site or at the site or already there. We look at access. Is it on roads that are already in, or are we going to have to put in a quarter-mile road to access it because we don't really want to do that? Topography. Is this land that's going to drain properly? Is this in a floodplain? Is this land with a bunch of rocks? Is this vertical on a hillside? We want fairly gently sloping, flat, easy to work land. Like I say, agricultural land, former agricultural land works really well for us. And then what are the community amenities and services? Are there schools? Is there grocery stores nearby? Is there some kind of a drugstore? Is there medical services? Are there senior centers around? Is there a park? What's in the area so that somebody living here would be within a 10-minute drive of all the stuff they need? Once we know the property, we'll contact the owner. Again, we use unlisted properties, but we will send a real estate agent out oftentimes to work with them and become our representative. We use the title company a lot. Again, none of this is a solo enterprise. If you're going to do anything in real estate, whether it's what we do or do a fix and flip or just build an ADU, you need to have a team. I'll do that as another show another time. But you need to build a team, and the title company is a key person on your team if you're doing the kind of stuff we're doing. Understand who's got title, what are the encumbrances, where are the liens on it, what are the easements, all that type of stuff. You can get information from your tax assessor's office on who owns the land. And trying to contact owners, mail, old snail mail still works, phone calls, whatever works for them. We use whatever media works for that owner. And again, we have agents that help us and can reach out to people. Maybe sometimes they're represented by an attorney or someone like that. We'll get hold of them. And so we follow up and get an introduction and find out, do you have any interest whatsoever? Then we'll put together a purchase contract. The money, as long as it's reasonable, we don't care. There's enough profit in the projects. If we do them right, we can pay someone a price that's even a little above market if we get the terms, and the terms is where the money is for us. The terms are long-term escrows. Now, you may not know that you can put real estate into escrow for a year, 2 years, even longer. I know that sounds crazy, but it works. If we can put it in escrow for that amount of time and do all this work while it's in the escrow, that means instead of buying it at the front end, we buy it at the back end. And that means we don't need to get money to take the property down and have it sit for 2-3 years while we entitle it, especially in California. Out of state, it's closer to maybe 14 months. But still, it's a long time to have the money out there, and you got to pay all that back to people when you could have a much smaller percentage of that, maybe a fourth of that much money, even less. And then you come up with the big money at the end right before you close it. That becomes a very short-term loan, very short-term. So you can do that, or even do concurrent escrows as long as you understand the rules, work with your real estate attorney and your title company, escrow company, make sure you're doing everything correctly. Also, one side note, when you're doing these kind of things, leave your assumptions at the door. I have talked to so many different so-called real estate professionals that tell me, oh, you can't do that, that's illegal. Well, that's weird because we've been doing it for years in multiple states and it's always been legal. Just because you don't know something, just because it was something you've never heard of, just because it's something that someone told you, maybe not, it doesn't mean it's not something you can do. Leave your assumptions at the door and do your own research. In fact, there are some areas that you can't do some of these things. Don't do them in those areas. So always, again, you're not a solo act, get a team. A real estate attorney, a land use attorney, if that's what you need, great escrow, good title. Make sure you have people around you so you don't make mistakes. So once we get that terms we want, the time we want, then we'll have an assignable contract, which means we can actually sell either the land or we can sell the contract itself for the land. And we do that because we're going to have to assign that to a different entity if we decide to move ahead, because for the first 120 days, we're just doing due diligence. And that means we have a review time of 120 days to figure out, is this thing going to work? We don't want to spend the time and money that it takes to do that until we actually have this in escrow so that it's under contract. If it doesn't work, okay, then we walk away from it and sorry, that didn't work out. If it does, then we'll actually put money in non-refundable and move ahead with the project. And we'll pay deposits to the seller throughout the escrow to make it worth their while. And if we leave the project after that initial due diligence period, then the seller keeps that money even though we turn the property back over to them. So again, free look, we make sure it pencils, again, market study, will anybody buy it? What price would they buy it for? The local agency is in favor of this or not, the soils conditions, any, no hazardous materials out there, environmental site assessments, all that is what goes into doing a feasibility. So once we decide to move ahead, then we got to structure a project. And in this case, what we're going to do is we tend to use a LLC syndication under Rule 506B of Regulation D, which may not mean much to you. All that says is there's specific rules we have to come under in order to do that. It means we don't have to do crazy things like file PPMs and those private placement memorandums, which sometimes you have to do for these deals. But it also means we can't advertise them. So that's why I don't advertise any of those kind of things ever to anybody. It's all personal contact. It's kind of your family, your friends, and your friends of your friends. That's what you limit it to. And that is, our investors are all kind of family to us. We know them. We know every single one of those. They know us. We know them. They have my personal cell phone number. They have my email. So it's not like I'm selling it to the general public. It's not like I'm selling stock in Coca-Cola or something. We'll form the entity. We'll get a tax ID for it, make an operating agreement for it. Again, have your attorney review those. And then you open a bank account for it, put an investor package together with that operating agreement, but also executive summaries, some type of a pro forma or a financial projection on what we're doing, how much money we need, what we think we're going to sell it for, what the potential upside is. We'll have a market study in there. If we have a market study done, we'll include that. Well, who's the management team? If you're looking at projects, ours or anybody else's, you always want to know who's managing them. The best project can pencil out and look good on paper and everything's solid, but the managers can mean it doesn't work. So make sure you have managers that are experienced and know what they're doing. And I don't care if you're building a small EDU or doing a value add multifamily, or if you're just, whatever you're doing, know the team you're working with before you get into anything. And then that's called vetting projects and vetting people. The third step in this is we'll go through and entitle the land. We'll go through the process. So we've acquired the land, and we've gone through we've put together a structure for the project, a business structure. So now we're going to go through entitlement. And entitlement is that legal process that we go through. We follow the rules and regulations for the local area that has to do with zoning and land use and Subdivision Map Act, those type of things for wherever we are. And now we do these in multiple states. That's why we're called coast to coast equities, because we work from California to Florida and multiple places in between. Every state, every county, every city has a slightly different set of rules for this. So you have to go learn what those rules are and work with them. That's what you did during due diligence, which you figured all that out. And you know their process and what they need and the fees and the documents and the reports and the studies and drawings, whatever they need. Then you're going to walk through zoning, general plan, conditions of approval that they're going to require, what their process and policies are, what kind of fees and reviews that they need. Is there a planning commission? Is there city council? Is there some kind of a subcommittee? Is there a local neighborhood committee you've got to meet with? You figure all these things out. And then decide, is there anything special you need? Like, do you have to form a special district, like a community facilities district or a revitalization district or an HOA or something like that in order to provide, say, flood control, like detention basins, flood control channels, increase the sewer, anything you have to do, utilities, whatever you may need, add streets, whatever is necessary, then the local agency has rules and conditions on what you need to do. You got to figure all that stuff out. And then when we get back, I'm going to go through the next part of the entitlement process, which is looking at who are the consultants that you may need in order to do these things. We're going to take a short break. I'll get back with finishing up the step 3, which is entitling, talking about the consultants you need on building solid foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley, and we are answering the question I get a lot: why and how does your company make money on raw land? We'll be right back after this.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Choose power today and help us create a cleaner planet. Over the past years, utility prices have rapidly increased. Power provides home energy solutions that would save money. Power is the world's first virtual solar company that aims to adopt sustainable energy worldwide. Our company delivers low-cost, clean, and reliable energy solutions. The solar investment allows you to become eligible for an income tax credit. The solar investment is a great way to provide long-term value. Power is the first solar company that reduces carbon footprint for a cleaner environment. Power is experienced and one of the fastest growing solar companies in the United States, which provide the best solutions according to your needs. Call today for your free solar consultation. Join us as one of our ambassadors and earn $1,000. Earn $1,000 when the installation is completed. Free sign up at www.power.com/marie.waite/ambassador. Feel good about what powers your life. Marie Waite, your solar consultant. 951-378-5316. Enjoy your life with solar.com.
This is Steve Matley. Join me every Thursday at 3 p.m. right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations radio talk show. I spent decades as a professional construction manager, business owner, real estate developer, and a college educator, and I enjoy learning new things from other people. We talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, but we cover a diverse range of other topics as well. Some of the topics we've discussed in the past few months include real estate investing, leadership, higher education, ADUs, marketing using technology, multifamily rental properties, business strategy, entrepreneurship. You never know who may show up or what they may talk about, so join us right here on KCAA for Building Solid Foundations Radio.
Are you a real estate investor looking for a new opportunity in one of the top tourist destinations in the world? Look no further. Welcome to Punta Cana. Perla Bahia is a private resort-style community in Punta Cana that consists of modern condos, custom villas, and various commercial amenities. So if you're interested in learning more or joining us on one of our monthly investment tours, don't hesitate to contact me today at 909-494-2280.
Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations. I'm your host, Steve Matley, and today I'm answering a question I get a lot from a lot of people who know me, which is, can you explain exactly what your company does on these land projects? And that's what we've been walking through. So we kind of went through, there's a process. You have to find land. You have to figure out some kind of a project structure that you're going to use, and then you're going to have to go through the entitlement process. And I kind of left you hanging right before the break. We went through some of what needs to be done for entitling. So let's talk about who the consultants are. Who does this work? So here's the interesting thing. When we do these projects, we don't design, engineer, or build anything. We are orchestra leaders. We don't write the music. We don't play the instruments. We don't know how to work with the instruments. What we need to do is make sure that we've hired the composer, and hired the musicians that all are experts in each of the instruments they play, and we need to be able to trust them to do their part competently and effectively when they need to do it. And we're just the orchestra leaders. Our job is to get them all to play together. And when they play together, it's beautiful. And if it doesn't, it's horrible, just like a symphony. So we have civil engineers. This tends to be our lead consultant. They're design consultant because we're working on horizontal land, and that's what civil engineers do. They design things flat, land. Architects design vertical, and civil engineers design horizontal typically. So that's our lead engineer, and there's other engineers we'll use, like soils and geotechnical engineers, environmental engineers. We'll need them for reports. We hire market study experts that'll review prices and product. What is the right kind of thing? What size homes, or is it apartments? What should we do here? There may be specialty consultants that are producing reports on noise, traffic, cultural, archaeological, biological, paleontological, development finance people, hydrologists, land planners, landscape architects. There's a whole list of consultants that we may need, and it changes depending on the project we're doing. Everyone's unique and different depending on the requirements. So that's a lot of what we're managing, is that process to get all them to put their stuff together that we can package up, put a bow on it, and hand over to the agency that has jurisdiction, the city or the county, so they can review it and we can get our approvals. Once we've done that process, and generally that ends up with a public hearing of some type, planning commission and or city council. Some cities it's one step, planning commission's the deal. Other cities, they require planning commission approval and then goes to city council for approval. If you're outside of a city, it's going to be a county board of supervisors instead of a city council. Then we have to sell it. If we get our approvals, we have to sell it, and so we can sell what we call the paper lots, sell the property with all the approvals, and generally we'll go into contract contingent upon that approval and the number of lots we end up with, or the number of square foot of commercial we end up with when all said and done. And they buy the land and they buy all the supporting documentation. If it's residential, we sell it by the lot. If it's commercial, we sell it by the square foot. And we price at whatever the acceptable land residual is, which means whoever the buyer is, they're going to figure out what their end cost or least value is for it, and they're going to go backwards all the way through how much it cost us to prepare it and to build it, to develop it, all the stuff, and say, okay, this is how much we can afford for the land. And when we agree on that, then we have a deal. That's how we're going to sell it. Once we sell it, we have to wind down the entity that we formed and that business structure. And so we're going to pay off the balance of a purchase price, pay off the balance of any outstanding expenses, any of the consultants that have invoices. We make sure all that's paid off and done. We give the investors that brought money into our project, we give them all their money back that they gave us. That's an expense to us. Then whatever's left over, that's the proceeds, that's the profit. And so we give that to the accountant. The accountant prepares final documents. They do a final accounting of everything, and they prepare, they'll actually do the K1s the following year, but they'll give the final accounting, and then we can distribute the profit to everybody based upon their percentage that they're owed. We will leave a small amount, a couple $1,000s in, to pay for the final accounting and filings and those type of things. But pretty much everything else, it's all being split up pro rata based upon what the agreement was with the managers and the investors. Now, if you were to drive by the same piece of land before we did anything and afterwards, you would not see any difference. You would see no difference whatsoever because everything happening is legal. It's like a fix and flip, but all the fix that's happening is a legal fix. It's changing the land use and the boundary lines and the number of parcels. You don't see it. There's no construction yet. But the value of the land could easily double in that process. So even though it doesn't look like anything's happening, there's things happening behind the scenes, behind the curtain where you can't see it. The person buying it typically, now again, we do some builds. We'll do some build-to-rent projects, typically senior stuff. But for most of our projects, we sell them to a builder or developer who'll do that work because we don't really want to do the construction unless we're going to keep it for ourselves. And so that person that's buying it, they will do the infrastructure improvement, utilities, curbs, gutters, flood control, whatever needs to be in there. And they'll also build the homes or the commercial buildings. Now, are there risks to this? Yes. Everything has risks. So again, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to explain what's going on here. But it can be a very long period of time to get this done. There's no guarantee you'll ever get the desired outcome you want because, again, you have to go through a public approval process. And it's possible that all the neighbors decide they don't want to do it, and your due diligence, you missed that, and so they show up and they don't want 300 homes next to them, or they don't want this new commercial building there, and so you could run into that. You could have the entire real estate market could turn while you're doing this, just like if you buy a house to rent it out, or for example, in San Diego, a lot of people bought homes and put them on the short-term rental market, and then the city changed the ordinances where most of them couldn't do that anymore. So there's things you can't control. There's always risk in everything. So, the public approval process can be unpredictable. So there's risk to everything. But there's upsides. You can make pretty good money at this. Obviously, for me, it's a full-time enterprise. It's a company. I have 2 partners, and this is what we live on, and we've done very well at it. And a lot of that is because of our ability to manage and our experience and our knowledge, but a lot of it is luck, too, because, again, there's a lot of this we don't control. I don't control the universe. I tell people I did buy a universal remote control once, and I was very, very disappointed to discover that it doesn't actually control the universe, not even remotely. So it's very disappointing. So it's just what it is. That's what everything you do, if it's got value, it's got risk. But you also have to have a team around you, and we rely on the team of people to be smarter than we are. And so why don't people do this? Mostly lack of knowledge. People don't know, or fear of the unknown, or they listen to uninformed people that say, well, you can't do that, it's not legal, or whatever, but it is. It's not what you've always done, or there's no good reality TV shows about it, so who knew? So that's what we do. I just wanted to share that with you today because I've had people ask me, what do you do, why do you do it, and what is this land projects, how do they work? So again, that's a 30,000-foot elevation view. I do encourage you, if you have interest, go do the research and learn about it. Don't just go jump in and try to do something like this without experience. There's a lot of landmines in this deal. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. Enjoyed just sharing with you today some of what my company does. I don't get a chance to do that very often. Again, I prefer having guests because I enjoy listening and learning from other people. We're here every week. Catch us on KCAA on Thursdays and on Sundays, or catch us on your streaming platforms afterwards. We'll be back next week, and until then, go do something different this week.
Miss your favorite show? Download the podcast at kcaaradio.com.
NBC News Radio, I'm Tammy Trujillo. The market